The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Indiana absolutely crushes Alabama in the Rose Bowl.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Indiana absolutely crushes Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Final score 38-3. Yes, it is awesome. It is the greatest day we've ever seen.
Oh, man.
My goodness, Spencer, this was just a beat down from start to finish. The first couple of drives weren't pretty. Indiana scored, and it was over. It was Allen Iverson, done. Or Vince Carter, done. Over. It was just, this was a total domination by Indiana over the SEC and Alabama in the Rose Bowl, my friend.
Yeah, it was. The SEC Homer crowd is having a rough go of it today. It's a rough go of it. So here's my favorite stat. First glance at the box score after watching them just obliterate the Crimson Tide here. Indiana had 2 different running backs who individually ran for more yards than Alabama's entire team. Than the 2 guys on their own. Alabama went for 23 yards on the ground. Well, Alabama doesn't run the ball a lot. Okay. Well, certainly that means they threw the ball a lot. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean they tried to. That doesn't mean they were successful. 170 through the air. I don't know if there is a statistical area that you could look at in this game, Goins, and come to the realization that, well, Alabama was actually close. It just got away. No. Indiana just completely dismissed. Look, I thought this game would be closer because Alabama's got that find a way sort of mentality to them. It's been a Kalen DeBoer feature. Kalen DeBoer, I don't think since he's been a Power 4 head coach, or a head coach really, going back to his time at Fresno State, I don't think he's lost a game like this. I think this is the largest margin of defeat that he's had. This is a smattering on national television. The weather cleared up, and I thought that would help Alabama. Nope, it did not matter. That game could have been played in the rain, in the sun, the sleet, the snow, the hail. It could have been played in February. No one had won coming off a bye, and then Indiana won by 35. Look, my subconscious can't even handle this. Goins, I'm used to seeing Alabama do this sort of stuff, and Indiana just ran them off the field, literally and metaphorically. This was a coaching, personnel, execution mismatch across the board. Man,
it's incredible.
What even is Curt Cignetti, dude?
I mean, he is a dog. That's what he is a dog. His Curt Cignetti. 38-3, Indiana wins. I picked 31-17, and I guess that was a little too disrespectful to the Indiana defense, who had Alabama's offense just in hell.
You hater.
I know.
You're a hater.
My bad. I'll take that. That's accountability on me. Indiana wins 38-3. We're going to break it down, talk about why this Indiana team is different, likes and dislikes, and a very intriguing matchup coming up in the semifinals. But look, we got another guy that wanted to hop in and talk about the fun. What's up, Brian Smith?
Oh, Indiana grad Brian Smith is here. Look at the smile on his face. If you haven't met Brian before, he's like the Grinch. Getting him to smile only happens when he's talking about high school film tape and when Indiana wins. Brian, you take it away.
I'm absolutely destroying Alabama fans on X right now. So this is I posted that Indiana was going to stomp them. I had over like 100 people reply saying I'm an idiot, all this. I can't even repeat some of the things that I've said back, but it's been a really good time with the retweets here in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're having fun, man. I mean, we came into this game, right, talking about Indiana. This was the biggest game in the history of the program. And I understand that in less than 2 years, we have said that 5, 6, 7 different times. But this one was true. This was the Rose Bowl on the national stage in the college football playoffs, a round further than you made it a year ago. And you were playing the Alabama Crimson Tide. You're taking on the SEC. Ain't no way you can beat Alabama. We're too good. Guys, this was embarrassing. They said that on the national broadcasts. Our guy Kirk Herbstreit said this is embarrassing for Alabama and the SEC, and Indiana was the one to do it, and they did it in every facet of the game. Fernando Mendoza, in the few times he had to throw the football, looked incredible. The Hoosiers ran for more yards than Alabama had total yards in this football game, and the defense had them running around like crazy. I hate that Ty Simpson got banged up, took a heck of a hit, and of course had to go to the backup quarterback, but this was not close. I mean, this is a different brand of football we're watching right now from Indiana, guys, and it's truly remarkable to watch.
I think that if Ty Simpson had the opportunity to come back into a game that was within 10 points, he might have. I don't know for sure, but I think there was an element of that Alabama coaching staff saying, we don't need to ruin this kid's future. This is over. Let's get to the offseason and go make some adjustments, because that was such. Remember last year in the playoff? Like, I'm still struggling to wrap my head around all of this because it's Indiana, for goodness sake. Do you remember last year in the playoff how much flack the Hoosiers program took from everybody under the sun with a microphone, like buffoons such as myself? Not in this, I didn't say this, I'm just saying as an example. For losing by blowout fashion to Notre Dame. This was infinitely worse than that. Are we going to talk about how Alabama's a bunch of frauds that they shouldn't have been? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give Indiana their flowers and say Curt Cignetti might be the best coach I've ever seen.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Brian?
think it was going to go to that.
I don't think you can say anything higher than that, but I'll let you try.
I'll still give it to Saban. He's got 7 rings, but at the same time, he's Nick Saban's disciple, and he reminds me a lot of him in his style of play and how they physically beat up on you. By the way, with a handful of 4-star, yeah, that's a really good look.
Can you raise one eyebrow and not the other?
No, I mean,
there it is.
There it is. That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. That
looks like Emmanuel yesterday when he was talking to me about you. But anyway, it's a really impressive staff. I mean, everything they did, they just outcoached them. The execution was on a whole nother level. By the way, the ESPN vertical chops, like the line play, they're moving 300-pounders out of the way like nothing.
Yeah. And it started in the run game on that second drive.
I think people overlook Indiana was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award. All 3 finalists were in the college football, were in the Big Ten. By the way, 2 were in the college football playoff. And Iowa won. I understand that, and they're really good. But boy, that looked like the best offensive line in college football to me.
Yeah, there were a couple of times. There were a couple of times when Mendoza dropped back that Bama brought pressure and got home, and he was kind of scrambling around. How about Mendoza's legs? I tried to tell people about it, and people didn't want to talk about it. He looks goofy when he runs. They called him a baby giraffe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
But
baby giraffe comment.
Hey, my man got it done.
Is that pretty?
He got it done. That's all that matters. And Indiana just totally handles this game. Mendoza had 16 rushing yards. I'm not sure what the sack yardage was on that, but I mean, Indiana just had a game plan. They executed. The first round bye stuff is now gone, thankfully, to Indiana. And I do think that that's a legitimate thing. They were 0-6 coming into that game.
Yeah.
And Indiana may be an outlier here, but the Hoosiers showed, because of the staff, the players, and the standard that's in Bloomington, you could take a year off and they could show up and play like they did today, guys.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I'm just coming back to Curt Cignetti over and over again in my head, because just over the course of this season, look at the way that they have leveled up. Okay, beating Illinois in the manner in which you did, that was impressive. Illinois, good team, not a great team, but a good football team, and just utter domination. And then on game day at Autzen, where Dan Lanning had lost one other time in his first season as a head coach, you go in there and win. All of a sudden, it's, hey, Indiana #1 team. Hey, it could be. They certainly could. And they just kept building. And then they go to the Big Ten championship game. And this is the biggest game. And boom. And to your point, Jacob, it kept coming up because it kept being the case. Indiana kept playing the biggest game in the history of its program, and it just keeps winning them. And this has been one season. This hasn't been over the course of 3 or 4 years. This has been 1 year. I don't know who else to compare Curt Cignetti to. I don't think you could say Saban because Alabama won before Saban was there. Indiana's never won anything, ever. And now they're the best team in the country.
Brian, you're the longtime IU grad here, guy that has talked and watched Indiana football for
He
quite
just called
some
you
time.
old, Brian.
It's not true. I didn't.
He embraces it. That's too bad.
There's nothing you can do about that, Spencer.
Yeah, now I'm dead in the water.
Brian, you've watched this for a long time for Indiana football. That's been horrible. How do you feel and kind of speak for the generation of yourself that has watched Indiana football not be good for so long to watch a game like this today?
It's so dominant today. My dad, who is scared to text somebody because he can't do it right, texted me in the first quarter. That's how dominant it was.
That was it. They should have called the game right there. They should have known.
Indiana, the first year I really started watching football was 1984, and Indiana was 0-11. 0-11.
A goose egg.
Yikes.
I mean, it's
That's
just
epic.
Yeah, Indiana just had no ability to recruit top talent. Their coaching was okay. Had a few great players like Anthony Thompson, Dunbar, a few other guys, but just didn't have good teams. To see what they're doing right now, ironically, it's just true, is very Alabama-esque. That's just so ironic because the opponent today, and I'm not trying to poke at Alabama because that is the softest Alabama team that I've seen since before Saban was there.
Yeah.
That is 2006 Alabama right there with multiple NFL offensive linemen going to the draft. And their rushing total for the game, 1.3 yards per carry, 23 yards. You stink. Indiana just slammed them in the face. They curb stomped them. Absolutely curb stomped them. And by the way, I'm going to continue to tweet while we do this because I'm having too much fun.
Brian's got receipts, baby. I love it.
I bookmarked a bunch. Oh, I did.
Good. And you know what? I hope every Indiana person, fan, parent, fan, roommate, player, coach, I hope everybody has receipts because people talk so bad about Indiana, not just Alabama fans, but SEC people and college football fans. Spencer, I'm sure you heard this as well. People they refuse to believe. And at what point do you buy in? Is this what it took? Was it this embarrassing beatdown of an SEC juggernaut for people to finally buy into Indiana? Maybe. You're going to gain some, not everybody. There'll still be, haters who are miserable and can't do it. But surely after beating Illinois the way you did, Iowa the way you did, Oregon the way you did, coming back and beating Penn State the way you did, continuing to hammer bad opponents, beating Ohio State, and then just absolutely destroying Alabama. How could you not? If you take off whatever blinders you have on, it's impossible not to believe in this.
I bet there are fans in West Lafayette that could find a way to not believe. Goins. I bet there are some that could find a way, but I don't think there is anything left for Indiana to prove, as crazy as this is, except to win the national championship. I mean, 2 different quarterbacks, 2 years. You realize the only teams that have beaten Curt Cignetti's Indiana Hoosiers were playing in the national championship game last year. Those are the only ones.
Yep.
I don't know how else to explain this. The coaching equivalent I go to as an Oregon guy, that think about how crazy this would be. What if Will Stein goes to Kentucky and goes 11-1 in his first year, makes the playoff, and then wins the SEC in 2027? That's the equivalent, isn't it? A basketball school with no history of winning football consistently that all of a sudden is just the best team in college football for a guy that most people hadn't heard of. I mean, I had because I cover FCS football in my other job, but this stuff is insane.
And weirdly enough, the Kentucky job might be easier to win at than the Indiana job in terms of where the programs are when the coach takes over. I mean, Indiana
possibly,
was literally not even winning FBS games. Kentucky's at least winning 6 games a year. They just finally moved on from Stoops, right? I mean, I think that's fair to say too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like if Jake Dicker won the ACC next year, but that wouldn't be as impressive because that's not in the Big Ten or in the SEC, which I don't think either one is. I mean, I think the Big Ten is the best conference in college football. Like, Brian, am I nuts there?
I don't think you're nuts. It just depends on your barometer. The SEC is deeper, but it's not near as top heavy as it used to be. I don't know if SEC fans will ever accept that. I still see
I don't even know if the depth is there.
Well,
like I didn't think this game would be as big of a blowout as it was. But Oklahoma and Alabama was a great game. It was really entertaining. But my number one takeaway after the game was, hey, I picked Oklahoma. I was wrong, but neither one of these teams is beating Indiana, which is correct.
That's exactly what I posted too.
And I just don't, I just don't think I can remember a time where we said that about one of the top teams in the SEC that they can't beat. Alabama's the runner-up in the SEC, and they are nowhere close to Indiana. Nowhere close.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
We're going to be talking about just a fantastic result to where Ole Miss put 27 points in the second half. Trinidad Chambliss went Archie Manning in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Ole Miss just completely outclassed the Georgia Bulldogs. They made plays. They have 5 stars. They're going to make plays, but they weren't as good as a team. And even they would tell you they're not as good as a team. In fact, the fluke was not what happened in the Sugar Bowl. The fluke is what happened in the fourth quarter in Athens. And even Georgia fans have to admit that. Ole Miss has the better team, and Ole Miss has the best team in the Southeastern Conference. And right now, I think Ole Miss is going to win a national championship, but maybe that's just the drama that is going on. I told you this game would look a little bit different than the last one. I told you how it was going to work out. I told you Ole Miss's defense was going to be a problem. Xavion Harris had 10 tackles in this game at a nose guard position, had 10 tackles. That's absolutely amazing stuff. The front 7 won this game for Ole Miss by making Georgia one-dimensional and not able to run the football. And once you stop the run, you beat Georgia. And now Pete Golding becomes the 3rd Ole Miss coach to beat Kirby Smart. Now Ole Miss has an all-time winning record against the gold standard of college football coaches right now. That is pretty awesome as well. We're going to talk a little bit about the Fiesta Bowl that is coming up. Ole Miss has the Miami Hurricanes, powder helmets, red jerseys, gray pants. We thought we didn't have an option. Those have to come out, right? The classics have to come out for that game. And then you have Oregon and you have Indiana in the other side of the bracket is going to happen. But right now it's all about Tempe, Arizona. I know that David Johnson's going to be heading out there with the Ole Miss 365 people, and he is going to be in Tempe, Arizona. I'm excited about that. We're going to talk about the portal starting tomorrow evening or Sunday morning or Saturday morning, one of the two. We have a lot going on, and I'm excited for all of you people to get to know Alex Dono, the host of Locked On Hurricanes. He's one of my favorite Locked On hosts, so I'm looking forward to the crossover with him. All the Georgia fans, I hope you are watching this program just as you promised that you were going to do all week, or are you going to be like the LSU fans that say you're going to show up and then not show up? You just got your tail whipped. And you get to watch Ole Miss football for the next 2 games from your couch. And that makes me happy because of how disrespectful you were. You would not believe the number of DMs that got sent to me with the way Georgia media started to talk about Ole Miss, the way this was an outclass thing. Ole Miss might as well, or Georgia might have well been playing Tulane against in this game. All because you looked at the fourth quarter like it was something that you did. It was something that Ole Miss did. And that is what you saw in the fourth quarter tonight. And they completely took over this game at the end. Georgia, all season long, made a habit out of coming back and pulling irons out of the fire and all of that stuff, making plays in the fourth quarter to win games. And they almost did it tonight. Gunnar Stockton is a baller. I will not hear any different. He just makes plays. He's not as good as Trinidad Chambliss, though. Even Gunnar Stockton would tell you that. No running back that Georgia has is as good as Kewan Lacey. And tonight, Ole Miss's defense was better than the vaunted Georgia defense. And because of that, Ole Miss kind of went up and down the field and had their way. There was a couple of mistakes, like in the second quarter, that you thought Ole Miss was going to get in trouble. And honestly, if Ole Miss didn't do that, they would have probably won this game by 3 touchdowns. If we're going to be real about it, that is how one-sided this game was for Ole Miss. And we're going to talk about the stats in just a second and show you exactly what I mean by that. But if the time management stuff and the drop passes and stuff like that didn't happen in the second quarter, the fumble return for a touchdown, Ole Miss just completely destroys Georgia. They didn't necessarily belong in the same field with them, but they made plays at the end to make it at least interesting. And Ole Miss ended up winning the game 39-34. A game that remarkably looked like I predicted all week long. Now, I got the score wrong in my prediction. I thought it'd be 27-21, but it ended up being 39-34. Ole Miss made plays. Once they figured out Georgia's run game and what they were doing, Ole Miss's defensive line was better than Georgia's offensive line, and they took over the game, made Georgia one-dimensional, forced Gunnar Stockton to beat you, which, to be fair, he almost did. It was one pass that Whiteout Williams had good coverage on away from that happening. But the call by Charlie Weiss on that last drive, throwing the ball downfield to Deshaun Stribling to get into field goal range, and how nails is Lucas Carnero. He's a machine. He's the best kicker in the country. Ole Miss has the best quarterback, the best running back, and the best kicker in the country right now. Not even close. And Kewan Lacey played his tail off. I hate that he fumbled that ball because I thought that was going to be his legacy. And I posted on social media that if Ole Miss loses this game, it will be because of 5 minutes in the second quarter that it allowed it to happen. Ole Miss came out in the second half and dominated that football game. Their offense was nearly unstoppable. Trinidad Chambliss went full Archie Manning in New Orleans, running around, all of this stuff. If you don't believe me, just look at some Archie highlights and then look at what Trinidad did. Amazing. Absolutely fantastic. And I am here for it. Kewan Lacey ran the ball on the Georgia vaunted run defense to the tune of getting, let's see, what did he get in the game? Let's see. I need to close some windows real quick. We'll see. I don't have it up at the moment, but it was close. I will look it up and get it shortly. But yeah, we had too many windows open right there. But Kewan Lacey had a day running the ball, and he was the receiver on the crazy Trinidad Chambliss Archie Manning stuff. And including one really big first down that led to an amazing sequence. Like, everybody likes to talk about those Jevon Sneed passes against LSU in 2008, about how perfect it was. I have never seen 3 plays in a row that are remotely like what Trinidad Chambliss was able to pull off. I mean, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Scrambling around, hitting Kewan, getting the first down, the long pass to Trey Wallace. It was worth it. It was awesome. And it got to the point when Ole Miss went up 34-24, that was like, holy crap, Ole Miss is about to do this. Ole Miss has the better football team. Because even Ole Miss fans thought that what happened in Athens wasn't the fluke. That was the normal thing. What we saw in the Sugar Bowl is that was a fluke, that fourth quarter. And Pete Golding, listen, I'm going to be real about something. They had some issues with clock management in the first half, and the going for two in the first half, I was not a fan of that. Pete Golding coached Kirby Smart under a bus, essentially, in this game. Kirby was the one who flinched. And you know what point that I knew that Pete Golding was going to win this game? When Kirby called the fake punt. Because you don't try to trick a team that you think you can beat straight up. You don't. You try to trick a team that you're trying to steal a possession because you know there's a good chance they're going to win. Even Kirby knew that Ole Miss was the better team tonight. Pete Golding and Ole Miss had an amazing game plan for the game. And when we come back, we will go over the stats. And don't forget, comment, and there's no way I'm going to get to all of these comments. So please, though, when you comment, please put where you're commenting from. I am going to stay longer than 30 minutes tonight, and I'm going to get through as many as I can, but no guarantees. Over the course of the next 7 days, we are going to find a way to do some lives and have some interaction with fans of what's going on, because this is officially the greatest football team in Ole Miss history. I don't care about winning a Dunkel National Championship or a perfect season in 1962. It's not in my lifetime. I know it was important and all of that. We are at the point where we need to start thinking about statues. Seriously, that's where we are. We are 2 wins away from a Disney movie being made about this team. I'm serious about that. To a win over Miami and a win over either Oregon or Indiana, and you are that away from having a Disney movie written about this program.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks.
Oregon's defense just completely and utterly suffocated Texas Tech the entire day. And Texas Tech's defense, every bit as good as we thought it would be, as I talked about, as many others said as well. A shutout in the playoff game. You remember how badly Oregon got beat in the Rose Bowl last year? They scored 21 points. That is the best singular game of defense that I have ever watched Oregon play. They did anything and everything they wanted to. They pressured the quarterback. They forced turnovers. They didn't let Texas Tech run the ball. Listen to these stats. This is just complete and utter domination. Texas Tech had 215 total yards of offense. They were 0 for 3 on 4th down. They were 6 of 16 on 3rd down, and they ran the ball for 78 yards, which was more than Oregon had in this game, but oh boy. 2.6 yards a carry. Baron Morton threw, 7 interceptions? No, it was only 2. It was almost 3. But it was only 2. Every single guy on the defensive side of the ball should be getting a nice sauna treatment tonight at the hotel. Maybe they're flying back right now. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. They deserve a day by the pool. They deserve a good massage, a nice meal, because they just played outstanding football. And, it's kind of full circle that the defense did that in this game against that team. Brandon Finney, my MVP. So forget Aaron Judge. Brandon Finney's the real MVP. For Oregon to have played Texas Tech here, when 2 years ago, I remember very vividly, Oregon went to Lubbock and they found a way to win, and they did it with offense and special teams as well. Camden Lewis hit a big field goal. But they won the game with their offense because the defense couldn't stop a cold. Tyler Shuck was carving them up. And in this game, the complete opposite. Because I remember fans at the time were saying, man, Tosh Lapoy's not the right defensive coordinator. Sometimes a little patience is warranted. That was a championship performance defensively for the Ducks. Everything that they just did completely justified all of the talk, hype, and expectation on that side of the ball. And man, I don't know. I mean, I know Brandon Finney's not going to make it 4 years with the Ducks, but he's got 2 more. He can still get better. I don't know how. He had 3 turnovers in the game. Bryce Betcher forced the fumble, of course, but Finney's there to recover it. I don't believe Brandon Finney allowed a catch in this game. There weren't that many catches to be had. Baron Morton had 18 completions, and 9 of them were to Terrence Carter Jr., the tight end. He was working over the middle of the field. I said coming into this game, look, Texas Tech has got a capable receiving core, but they're average. They're not bad. They're decent. But I don't think they're going to make those explosive plays. So the question became, in my view, could Texas Tech create explosives in the run game? And for one moment, they did. Bryce Betcher makes a mistake, and then what does Oregon's defense do? Bent for just a moment. Really got chipped rather than bending if we're envisioning a metal rod. It got chipped, but it didn't break. Not even close. 50-yard field goal. And man, Atticus Sappington, I know he missed the field goal at the end, which could have put us all at ease a lot quicker. But, we'll forgive him for that. For him to open up the scoring with a 50-yard field goal in this game was so big because it became very clear that this was, after the first quarter, I think we all realized, yep, that under that I heard that guy Spencer talking about, boy, that looks like it's going to hit. Yeah, that was the easiest under of all time. It was 51.5, and both defenses were really good. But Oregon's defense still outperformed my expectations. And I could probably talk for 40 minutes, maybe I will, about how well this defense played, the number of moments that they did really, really well. But think about the moment where you really started to get excited in this game, where you really thought, okay, I think Oregon's really got this one. It was the second Brandon Finney interception. Texas Tech had finally put together a drive. It was their best drive of the game. They had a couple third down conversions. They did not have a fourth down conversion because they didn't convert one in this game. But they were moving the ball down the field. They hit a long pass. And it looked like Oregon's red zone defense, which had been a question mark throughout the year. There are not that many questions with this Oregon football team. Among them are the cornerback 2 position, the linebackers sometimes, and the red zone defense. That's about all you can look at and say, yeah, the defense has got to be better coming into this game. And guess what? Aside from one play, linebackers played well. Cornerback 2 position, I think it's got to be iffy. That's a whole. I can't flush that out in the next 3 minutes and make this particular point. But for the thing that Oregon was the worst at on defense this year, one of the worst in the country, to have come up with a turnover in that spot, Tosh Lupoy, and I don't know how much he's heard this particular narrative over the last several years, that he's a great recruiter, but not a great scheme guy. He just went out for 4 quarters, and I think Mac Leftwich is the name of the Texas Tech offensive coordinator. Tosh Lupoy just went out there and pantsed him, ran circles around him, absolutely clowned him the entire game. Yes, Oregon's defensive personnel are better than Texas Tech's offensive personnel. Not 0 points better. You know the last team that Oregon shut out? The only other team, JMU, by the way, scored 34 points on this Oregon defense. That was a big point of concern, wasn't it? No, not for anyone that was paying attention, like me and many of you. But anyway, I digress. We all know who I'm talking about. So Oregon's defense pitching a shutout in this game. The last time that happened was 2024. It was on the road. Can anybody in the comments right now? We'll do a little live trivia for all of you out there. I see the comments rolling in. Great to have you guys here. If you can come up with who Oregon last shut out, and you're the first to drop a comment, I'll give you a shout out. Oh, there it is. There it is. Jury and Mitchell 924 comes up with it. Purdue. 1-11 Purdue, who fired their head coach a few weeks later. That's the last team that Oregon held to a goose egg. And it was the first team they'd held to 0 points since like Oregon State in 1994 or something like that. To take that Texas Tech offense, which was certainly flawed, and hold them to the same amount of points that Purdue put up as a 1-11 team last year. Absolutely dominant. completely and utterly outstanding across the board. So I've got more good things to say about the defense because that's where everybody's head is at right now, right? I mean, kind of hard to come on here and gas up the offense, but a lot of moments that I want to go through. I've still got more big picture thoughts on the defense. Oregon season is still alive, and I'll just sprinkle this thought out there. Dan Lanning has won more games than the year before every season leading into this one. He has now, with this victory, matched last season's total.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
It's San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks Week 18 to end the regular season for the entire NFC West for the 1 seed in the NFC.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast.
All right, Croc, let's get into the injury report here so we know who's going to be on the field for the most part before we get into the keys to victory and what the 49ers have to do to come out on top against the Seahawks in Week 18. And some fairly good news, I think, on the injury report for the most part, especially when, now look, there's some players who are on IR and not coming back, but there's nobody who's listed as out currently of the active roster for the San Francisco 49ers in this one. So that is the very good news. Christian McCaffrey had a little back stiffness this week. He's been cleared to play, so he's going to go. Kyle Juszczyk's dealing with a hip. He's been cleared to play, as has defensive lineman Yetur Gross-Matos, who's been dealing with a knee injury, and it seems like he's kind of constantly had an ailment when he's been a 49er and really throughout his NFL career. George Kittle listed as questionable, along with Upton Stout, who needs to be cleared from concussion protocol. Keon White, who came up with a groin injury in the last game, is also listed as questionable. Ricky Pearsall listed as questionable, ankle and knee. And then Trent Williams has the questionable tag. We'll push Trent Williams aside for a second here, Croc, because the big one is George Kittle is he says he's going to play. So George Kittle very likely going to be out there for the 49ers, which is really good news. He would not miss this one for the world. I have a feeling Ricky Pearsall, as long as he didn't have much of a setback, he's been kind of limited recently anyway. I imagine he would play. I don't know about Trent Williams though, Croc, and that's the big one. The fact that he's questionable and not ruled out, I think, is really a big one. And here's the quote from Kyle Shanahan on Trent Williams. He said he's made good progress during the week. And Williams has tested it out a bit, even though he didn't practice this week, and he wouldn't rule anything out. He said it needs to be possible based off doctors, and then it's going to be on what Trent tells me. I definitely don't want to lose any players for the following week when we're in the playoffs. But I also look at when you're playing to play one less playoff game, you can look at that as a playoff game. I know the season is not over if we lose, but you still got to go play a game next week on the road if you lose, and you want to completely avoid that by winning. So I see this as a playoff game too. I don't look at it as it's maybe that you lose them, you won't have them next week. I look at it as simple as if Trent, the doctors say it's okay, and Trent believes he can do it and get through it, then there's no decision on my part. We definitely have him up. So there you go. Doctors have to say he's good to go if he feels well, and then Trent Williams would have to say, yep, I feel like I can go. So it'll probably be a pregame testing sort of a situation to see if Trent Williams is able to go next week. Otherwise, it'll be Austin Pleasance again at left tackle. Croc.
Anytime I see questionable, I lean towards that guy's going to play. This the last week, and if you're the 49ers, you want Big Trent out there, really, because it's not like any ordinary week. Typically, okay, if you want to preserve him for the next game because he's not 100% healthy, all right, let him sit out of the game. But this one, you're fighting for the number one seed. So if you have him out there and he is better and better capable of moving and playing than Austin Pleasant, then You have him out there because he has the following week to rest. Now, you don't want him to make anything worse. And if the doctors are saying, if he plays, this is going to get worse, then he just has to sit. There's no choice there. But if it's something that's not going to get worse and it can get better with rest, I would play him this week. And the following week, hopefully, 49ers win this football game. You give him that week off and he gets to recover and all that. And then he's ready to go for the divisional round playoffs.
Yeah, and somebody needs to tell the offensive lineman to calm down if Brock Purdy throws a pick six on the first play of this game, because that's where Trent Williams got hurt. Was trying to run down a return. Apparently got up to 17. So John Lynch on KBR said he got up to 17.5 miles per hour. Trent Williams did, trying to chase down the interception return, and that was fixed today. Not 17.5 Crockett, 17.6. I think Trent and Kyle and everyone wants everyone to know how fast Trent Williams is at this old age. Still 17.6 miles per hour is pretty good for an offensive lineman there. But that's how he hurt his hamstring. Hamstrings are the type of thing where you can re-aggravate them and hurt them and potentially tear them worse. So that is the worry for Trent Williams. And I'm sure he knows at this point his body quite well. And if he can go, he'll go. And if not, it's going to be Austin Pleasants. And so it's going to be a task for the San Francisco 49ers, Croc, because what's your number one key to victory for the 49ers to beat the Seahawks this week?
Oh, man, number one key to victory is just being able to run the ball. I think there's a lot of excitement about what the 49ers have looked like over these last 2 weeks, right? And they're cooking offensively. Defense, that's a whole different ballgame. But offensively, everything is kind of hitting right now. But a big part of what I think the success is, aside from Brock Purdy playing out of his mind, it's the run game. Right, like that's something that's been super stagnant for most of this year. And now you see back-to-back weeks where, and I'm not looking at the game log right now, but if I had to assume back-to-back weeks, Chris McCaffrey having his highest yards per carry in games. So he's doing terrific, looking good, breaking off some of his longest runs. The 49ers need to continue to get that, because I think the more you have that, the more it keeps the opposing teams having to play a little bit more honest. And the more they have to play honest, I think the better that is for Brock Purdy, because now, man, everything's not on me. And now you got the play actions and you got the boots and you got all these throws that he's making and he's hitting these windows behind the linebackers. Why is he capable of hitting those linebackers? I think they're playing a little tight because they have to defend the run as well. So the run game, I think the success of the 49ers against the Seahawks starts with on the ground.
Which is a tough task, and that's why you would like to have Trent Williams out there, and you want to have your best offensive line, even though they played pretty darn well, phenomenally well, without Trent Williams last week. And obviously George Kittle helps in the run game as well. But they're going against a defense this week that is much better than the Chicago Bears run defense. In fact, according to EPA per play, Chicago Bears had the 23rd ranked run defense in the NFL, Croc. The Seattle Seahawks, number one. Number two defense overall to the Houston Texans. Number one run defense in the NFL is what Chris McCaffrey and the San Francisco 49ers are going up against this week. So if they can run the football, that is a huge boost to what the 49ers are going to be able to do in this one. And it's about creating some bigger plays in the run game. And that's something we hadn't seen. And you're right. McCaffrey was up over 5 yards per carry in week 16, 6.1 yards per carry in week 17. And he was having trouble getting to 4 yards per carry almost all year long. So some big runs. Can they keep that momentum going and keep creating some big runs? And they're going to try to run the football. That's a huge one. It's a huge key. And if you told me right now that Christian McCaffrey is going to be at 5 yards per carry in this game, I would feel pretty darn good about the 49ers' chances of winning Saturday night against the Seattle Seahawks.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Without Chris Olave, the Saints are going to be counted out on Sunday, but if they get a win, there will be no question about who the best rookie in the NFL is.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast.
The New Orleans Saints are not expected to have wide receiver Chris Olave on the field due to a medical issue. We'll highlight that here in a moment, and the opportunity that this presents for the Saints, who are going to be looked at now as a team that stands no chance up against the Atlanta Falcons. Well, if they ended up getting a win, it certainly proves that the Saints are in a very good position, that Kellen Moore is a very good head coach, and that their rookie quarterback is the best rookie in the NFL. Let's start off with Chris Olave, focused on that and what's going on. So this was news reported by Nick Underhill over at NewOrleans.football, and then confirmed later on. Kellen Moore came into the media room and kind of gave a little bit of an update on Chris Olave. So here's the deal. And this was Nick's original report, that they had figured out that he had a blood clot in one of his lungs. And so he had to undergo a procedure to get that taken care of. He's already been released from the hospital. He actually posted an Instagram post of him flexing in a hospital bed, letting everybody know like the bounce back's on the way and all that, which I understand it. But Chris, you already had the bounce back, my guy. Like over the course of the offseason, 24 years old, contemplating retirement now. He becomes only the second New Orleans Saints player in the team's history to catch 100 or more passes. He set a career high in receiving yards with 1,163, and then also set a career high with 9 receiving touchdowns. Will finish 1 touchdown shy, though, of that 101,010 mark, but that's fine. And I love the bounce back, the motivation, all that. But like the bounce back already happened for Chris Olave. So don't let him not being available for the 17th game of the season, which was a big time goal for him. He said it was one of his main goals going into the season. And this is just the body doing what the body does sometimes, more than it is an injury or anything like that. This is nothing that anyone has any control over. He's going to end up missing that 17th game, but don't let that distract from how good his season was and how great and outstanding he was over the course of the season, especially the closing few weeks of the year, where he totaled 140 plus receiving yards in one game. I think it was 148, his career high, and then 119 the next game. And in a pair of games where everyone knew the ball was going his way, he was unstoppable. And so I don't want this to overshadow this one game and this situation that's going to cause him to miss this game. We believe Kellen Moore, despite ruling several players out on like Wednesday all throughout the season, was like, we're kind of going to see how the process goes, everything like that. But, he had a procedure to get a blood clot taken care of and everything. Him getting out on the field on Sunday is quite the stretch. So we do not expect to see Chris Olave on Sunday, and that's okay. This is one of those bigger than football moments. But there's no doubt about it that he had an incredible 2025 season. I don't think that this is going to impact him long term. Everybody that I've kind of spoken to that has some knowledge of the situation is kind of talking about a month and a half in terms of what the process for him will look like. And then he can start getting ready for the offseason, an offseason program. So it doesn't sound like that's going to get in the way of anything like minicamp or OTAs or anything like that. So that's good news for Chris, who I know is going to be chomping at the bit to get back out on the football field. And even before that, of course, is probably going to either get an extension or at least continue negotiations and conversations with the team. And I don't think that this being one of those like internal body does what the body does sometimes things is going to be used against him in any kind of contract negotiation or anything like that. He proved that he could stay on the field this year. Maybe, I don't know, we talked about it in the Saints squad show about incentives and things like that. I don't think Chris Olave is in the place in his career where you would typically give like an NFL player incentives in their contract, but maybe there's some playing time, this, that, and the other that gets built in. But outside of that, like, I don't think that this specific situation impacts what those conversations look like. But certainly this impacts the Saints going into Sunday's game against Atlanta, because now their passing game at the wide receiver position is entirely depleted, right? Mason Tipton hasn't practiced yet this week. Chris Olave is going to be out. Rashid Shaheed's in Seattle, and Brandon Cooks is in Buffalo, and Devon Vele is on injured reserve and shut down for the season as well. And so the Saints are going to be turning to the only 2 active and healthy wide receivers right now on the active roster are Kevin Austin Jr., who, hey, just played a career game last year for himself, caught his first career touchdown. Awesome. Would love to see him build on that. And then Dante Pettis, who had what would have been one of the best plays in the Saints season had it not been for the fumble at the last second there. But It's going to be those two guys and then probably some elevations from the practice squad, whether it be Samari Torre, whether it be Ronnie Bell, who's already been elevated once this year, or perhaps you get our first look at Elijah Cooks, who just joined the team a few weeks ago, 6'4", 215-ish pounds. He's a bigger bodied guy. They went and got him when they lost Vele for the rest of the year. Probably see some of those guys either added to the active roster or elevated to the game day roster. I expect we'll see some roster moves or a lengthy list of roster moves on Sunday to get everything kind of shuffled around for the actual game day roster and everything. And so lots of little moving pieces that will happen there. But then I think the passing game, for the most part, still runs through Juwan Johnson. I think you're still looking for opportunities to get Taysom Hill involved. Taysom's historically been great against Atlanta. I know that he hasn't had the season this year that maybe people expected in Kellen Moore's offense and him returning to the game and all that. But hey, this is the one where you go pedal to the metal, right? Like, what do you have to lose here, right? What are you holding anything back for at this point? It's week 18, last game of the season, bitter rivalry, opportunity to go out 5 straight wins, pull out all the stops. And to that point, if the Saints get that win, I think that says a lot about a couple different places on this team. First of all, it says a ton about the offense. Like, if the offense is able to sustain the losses of Eric McCoy, struggling play on the interior of the offensive line, the losses of Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, and Devin Neal, the loss of Foster Moreau, the loss of Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks, Devon Vele, and no Mason Tipton to fall back on, we assume. We'll see. A quarterback change, a brand new offense, and a first-year head coach. If they can absorb all of that and get a win to close out the season on a 5-game win streak, that sure says a lot about what's really working for New Orleans. And what would really be working for New Orleans in that case would be Kellen Moore. And if you're an all-access member, you got a film study showing you exactly how it is that he's been scheming receivers open, things like that. We kind of discussed it on Wednesday's episode as well. And I think that it says the world of Tyler Shuck, who could potentially walk in and do what no other quarterback has done here in New Orleans, which is follow Drew Brees, have a depleted roster, and still win football games. Then all of a sudden, not having certain pieces goes from being a reason why it wasn't successful to succeeding with that. Like, that's a very, very different conversation. And so a win on Sunday, I think, absolutely cements Tyler Shuck's Offensive Rookie of the Year campaign.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
The Chicago Bears should have a much easier time in the rematch against the Detroit Lions on Sunday because these two teams are trending in the opposite directions.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast.
We're going to look at just how much has changed for both of these teams, but especially Detroit, since week 2, and why that's going to make this matchup the second time around a lot easier for the Bears. It doesn't guarantee them a victory, but the Bears offense is in a completely different place than it was back then. The Lions defense is missing some key figures that were important in that first matchup. The Bears defense isn't necessarily playing its best football right now, but the Lions offense is sputtering quite a bit as well. And I want to talk about some of the emotion in this game too for Ben Johnson and the revenge game aspect and whether that can be a good thing or a bad thing in this matchup. But I'm really confident in this Bears offense coming into this game against the Lions and maybe not necessarily picking up exactly where they left off against the San Francisco 49ers last week, but being able to start faster and put up more of a fight than they did in the first game against Detroit. Yeah, they ended up finishing with 21 points scored in that game, but they were behind so much they were kind of pushing to try and score, and it wasn't so much like a well-rounded, in-control offensive performance. It was kind of, it was mixed. But this time around, I mean, first of all, right, yes, you've got Caleb Williams playing his best football. You've got this offense scoring points seemingly at will the last couple of weeks and finding ways to win these games. But also, if you just think back to where this offense was in week 2, right? The offensive line, it's still the same players, well, except for the left tackle, but like they were still trying to figure out the cohesion, especially on the interior, right? The communication between Jonah Jackson at right guard and Drew Dahlman at center, and even Joe Tooney at left guard. Like, they were having trouble really operating in sync and being, greater than the sum of their parts at that time. The running game was a bit more of a mess at that point. They just couldn't get a lot of rhythm to it. They weren't holding up super well in pass protection. And it's worth mentioning, too, that like Braxton Jones was the left tackle in that game and is not going to be the left tackle in this game. And he had a particularly rough game in week 2 between Aiden Hutchinson and Al-Qadim Muhammad. Like, he got like 5 or 6 pressures coming off of that left tackle spot. And that was very clearly a weak link that ended up leading to a benching and a change and then injuries and all that. And now it's Ozzie Trapillo, which is still going to be a tough matchup for him. But like, they're helping Ozzie Trapillo a lot, and left tackle has not been, any kind of major weakness the way it was a lot more back in week 2. And I kind of glazed over it there. But like, the running game is a lot better now. Like, they had some decent success running the ball against the Lions, but it was 12 carries for DeAndre Swift and 7 for Kyle Monangai. Swift had like a 20-yard run that kind of inflated his per carry average because he wasn't gashing them consistently, but he got the one breakaway to kind of lift those numbers a little bit. But it was a lot of 3 and 4 yards that just weren't being as much of a focal point in the offense as it has been lately. I think the Bears are just themselves are going to be running the ball better, and then the Lions, I think, are a little bit more vulnerable to the running game right now. I also look back to week 2 and notice that, and we can remember that like Luther Burden and Colston Loveland were not really big parts of the offense at that time. They were rookies in their second ever games, and also they were both guys that had missed OTAs and mandatory minicamp with injuries and were slow getting back at training camp. So we kind of knew that there would be this acclimating period that they were going to just kind of be, accents, but not featured parts of the offense back then. And Rome Odunze had a big game against the Lions, and you're not going to have him for this matchup, but still, like, to have Burden be such a force in this system, and seems to be on track to playing on Sunday. We'll see how the final injury report comes out Friday as this podcast comes out, but I think he's on the right track there. And then obviously Colston Loveland we've seen grow into a bigger piece of this offense. Like, the Bears have a more well-rounded offensive attack in general, even if, losing Rome Odunze might neutralize some of the overall gains of the offense. Like, from then, you still have more ways you can attack and hurt the Lions. Whereas like back in that game, it was a lot of Rome Odunze and a little bit of DJ Moore, and they didn't really have much else going for them offensively. Now you've got Moore and Burden and Loveland and Komet and and everybody else that's still part of the offense that you feel like you can be a pretty dynamic attack there. I also think just it's worth digging down on, like, Caleb Williams is just playing a lot better football than he did back then. In that Lions game, you may recall he threw an interception where he was flushed out of the pocket and he overthrew one of the receivers by the sideline, just like clearly overthrew him, and it went too deep and back where the safety could make the pick. I don't remember if it was Branch or if it was Kirby Joseph. Looks like it was Kirby Joseph. And so I just think he's been more accurate in recent weeks, like taking really good care of the football and just really dialed in and comfortable in this offense in a way that he definitely wasn't back then. And I think the playbook wasn't as wide open back then as it should be right now. Like they've added so much more over the course of the season as they've had weeks and weeks and weeks to prepare and game plans. Like, they're going to have their full arsenal up to speed. Whereas the Lions defense will not have its full arsenal up to speed. A lot more banged up now than they were in week 2 when they were a pretty healthy group. Like, neither of their 2 starting safeties, Brian Branch or Kirby Joseph, are healthy. They're both on injured reserve. We talked a little bit on yesterday's Crossover Thursday podcast with Matt Deary about this Lions defense, just looking a lot different and how hard it is to not have 2 Pro Bowl caliber safeties roaming back there. But also their cornerback, Terrion Arnold, has been banged up. I believe he's also on injured reserve, or at least he's on the injury report. I know he's been out a little bit here and there. And with this week on the injury report, I know their linebacker Alex Anzalone has been banged up. They've got a few guys that if they do play, they're not going to be 100%. And it's not to say like, that the Lions are like more hurt than the Bears because the Bears are dealing with their injuries too. It's just to say this defense is not nearly as full strength as it was back then, and that's going to help this Bears offense look that much more sharp. It'll make the matchup that much easier. I mean, that Ben Johnson's going to adjust to what he saw from the Lions defense, and the Lions defense is going to adjust to what they saw from the Bears offense. So it's not like, again, I'm not expecting it to be, a huge blowout, cakewalk type of game. But I think the offense should be able to get, 4+ touchdowns on the board in this game. You should be able to score at least 4+ scoring drives. Maybe they're not all touchdowns. Maybe you get some field goals in there. But I think they should be able to move the ball pretty well and finish with points and not have as many 3-and-outs and punts that were really kind of keeping them from building momentum the first time around against Detroit. And if they can get a little more time of possession and control the clock a little bit with the running game, and then, you need your defense to hold up its end of the bargain. But it should all align for a better day at the office, especially on that side of the ball. I am more worried about the defense because of its recent struggles and less, less confident that all of a sudden they're going to have a much better day this time against Detroit than they did the last time. Certainly, it was the most points the Bears have given up in a game, so they can't, maybe I shouldn't say they can't be worse, but, they got nowhere to go but up. And I think there's some little things we can point to say, yeah, this should make life easier for the Bears defense